Okay. Well, let's get started. Only because we have a packed board governance is always a packed session. We always have a lot of questions that takes us right up to the end. So we want to make sure we have enough time for all of you to get in your questions and we have time to review the material. I believe we're working on the link. We apologize again for those of you who received the wrong link. Um, I'm sorry, has a new one been sent out? What did you say, Rebecca or Leslie? Yes. Okay.
It's been sent
So
out.
you should have that.
Hmm.
All right, let's get started with board governance then. I think, Rebecca, you're kicking us off with housekeeping for today.
Yeah. All right. As you all know, we're back on Zoom again together, but we try to keep it as interactive as possible. So we ask that folks go ahead and use that raise hand feature when you have a question or something you'd like to add. You can also have the chat there, which everyone is well versed in using, which is nice to see people chatting on there. And thanks for assistance that you all provide us during the class. When somebody has a question, you can answer it for us. It really helps us as we're navigating multiple things on our end, so we appreciate that. And thanks for enabling your video as you're able to. We like to see faces and get to see reactions from people in real time, which is really nice as well. Um,
Okay.
I will mention that if you have some paper handy, it might be a good idea to have some paper ready, whether it's printer paper or a tablet or a notebook, whatever you have in front of you will work just fine. Um, we did have a
Good.
second batch of workbooks that went out last week, on Thursday of last week, so I'm hoping that most of you maybe hopefully received them. If you're further out in the state, it may take a little longer, but we did provide the digital copy of the session workbook pages for this session here on board governance. We can always, oh, okay, good, Paige. All right, Laura. If you'll, I'll keep track of who's saying that they still haven't gotten it, and as assuming that you're in that second batch, I'm going to make the assumption that you'll get it this week. But thanks for your patience with that.
Yep.
As you get those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go over the agenda. As you can see, that it's pretty packed there. Just as a reminder, um, sessions are fluid. We're going to get breaks as needed, and we try to do that every hour as much as we can in terms of we understand that if you have to go before then, please feel free to do so. Um, And again, we try to time it that way, at least because of the intensity of the information. We want to make sure you don't miss anything. Again, you'll still get everything in the wraparound session, but then again, you still would like to be present to hear Dr. Palmer go through it. So as you can see, we're having a brief introduction. We'll have your capacity results that you had taken at the last session. And then we're going to dive into board governance, which will go over board composition, duties, expectations, financial management, and fundraising, human resources, accountability and evaluation, and then bylaws and legal compliance. And again, each of these come compact with its own lot of information and questions usually. So please, you did great last week. We enjoyed all the questions and the feedback. So please continue to do so during this session. But first, before we get started, we're going to do a 10-minute breakout for you all to get acquainted and to do some quick introductions. But one of the things that we'd like, a couple of questions we'd like for you to answer in this breakout, and we'll also put this question in the chat. What is your nonprofit known for? Beyond just your mission. Okay. Again, what is your nonprofit known for beyond your mission? And then what's something you want to brag about, when you're talking about your organization? What is your organization known for, and what is it that you want to brag about? So I think Rebecca's going to put you in some breakout groups,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we'll get rolling.
Yep, we're just doing some random samples of breakouts, so you're going to be with different people than last time. We did our roles or titles last time, and this week it's a little bit different. So we'll go ahead and schedule it for 10 minutes, and I'll put the instructions there in the breakout chat, so you all have those in front of you. And you'll get that warning when it's about time to come back with the group. You'll get 60 seconds. And at any time, if your group has a question or something, or you're all done, you can come back in the main room. You're not stuck in there. If you'd like to leave, you may. But I'll go ahead and open up the rooms now. We'll see you back in 10. And I got a couple people I'm going to go ahead and assign.
Okay. Is that all? Is that all the rooms, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think we're all back.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, Dr. Palmer, it's on you.
Right. Good morning, everyone. And as Lisa um, stated, I hope you were able to do some introductions and get to know each other a little better. Hopefully, everyone was able to share a little bit about who they are and help you to learn a little bit more about your or their organization. I see some activity in the chat. What were people bragging about? What were you all bragging about? And you can unmute yourself or you could use the chat if you'd like. What county are you from? And then give us an idea of what's great about your organization, or what did you brag about in the breakout set? Make it short, short and
Yeah,
sweet.
I
But
think the resiliency of kind was kind of just repetitive with all of us. It's just how much has been thrown on our plates, and not just our organization, but others too. And the resiliency of how we are also utilizing AI partly too, not necessarily to replace anything, but to help as a resource. And how we are just kind of awesome for having to kind of
good.
work through it.
Good, 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 good. You are absolutely awesome. Anybody
Thing.
else?
I think the
Uh-huh.
same thing kind of flowed through our group was about resilience, overcoming Hurricane Helene and all the different things and revenue and income strengthening. I mentioned for our organization, we are a healthy money habits financial literacy organization. Our goal is inclusive financial literacy and April being National Financial Literacy Month, our county, Cumberland County, is bringing us in City of Fayetteville to accept the proclamation on behalf of National Financial Literacy Month for the city. So we're super excited about that.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for sharing that. So Cumberland County, any other counties anybody else wanna shout out your county? Anybody else? What are you bragging about? Crystal, my son is at Methodist University. He's a junior.
What? Right around the corner.
Uh, yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, I see Jackson County in the chat. Anybody else? What do we need to know uh, about your organization? Lisa, I see you unmuted yourself. You're going to share some of what people have
Yeah, it's going so
in the chat.
fast. Uh,
I know.
we have Raleigh Camarada. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. A music organization that survived COVID. Um, what else here and here? People are saying hey to each other because they're neighbors, which is great.
Okay. Okay, good, 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 good.
Um, slow parking in water. Oops. Mecklenburg County, House of Working to expand.
I don't know. I'm a
Work.
loudmouth, so I'll just say that
Go
we're
ahead,
Uh-huh.
Sarah. Sarah, I see your hand. Go ahead. Uh-huh.
Okay, thanks. I am a board member from the Guilford County Partnership for Children in Guilford County, and I didn't mention this in our small group, but one of the things I wanted to brag about is the creativity of the staff when it comes to um, figuring out different ways and different programs that can be funded that keep us aligned with our strategic mission, which is to solve the childcare crisis in Guilford County. While I am part of the decision making for program funding, really the brag really goes to the Guilford County Partnership for Children, ED, Heather Adams, and her staff. So just want to brag.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. We have a lot in common. I'm in Guilford County also. I'm in Greensboro. And years ago, in the early days of Smart Start, I was the program evaluator in Davidson County. So
cool.
we have just a couple things in common and served on that board for a little bit too in Davidson. So good to see you back this week. Let's hear maybe one more and then we'll move into our material or move into our work for the day. Anybody else? I know the chat is loaded. So thank you all for chiming in. Is there another voice?
I'll share.
Okay, Corey, go right ahead.
Tri Health Project, we are 40 years open this year. Super proud of that. Helping people living with HIV for 40 full, beautiful years. And I just want to brag that we are building a peer support program from the ground up. We looked at some models out there. We couldn't find one for HIV, so we are working on that. And as someone with lived experience, I am so proud to be working on that myself. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. And Adriana and I serve on the COC board, membership network together. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. Okay, so we're going to move into our work for the day. And our topic for today is board governance. But before I have the team switch over to our slide deck, if I could just, in thinking about last week, the work that we did last week, what resonates with you the most? Like when you think about the work that we did last week, what comes to mind to you first? And you can use the chat. Team will rely on the chat for this as opposed to the audio. But what resonates with you as it relates to last week and what we worked on? What comes to mind first? What comes to mind first? Like I know that was a long time ago, and someone mentioned a few minutes ago, we do a lot on any given day when we work within a nonprofit organization. So I know a lot has happened since last Tuesday morning at 9:30. But what resonates with you the most? Like, what is it that you recall in terms of our work from last week? Because we're building upon every week, we're going to add another layer, add another layer, add another topic, add more concepts as we learn about managing nonprofit organizations. What resonates with you the most from last week?
I think I'm Chris. Just I think what resonates most with me was identifying those areas where we're lacking, even though it feels like we might be sustaining, but there's areas where we could really improve to just continue to grow. And I
Awesome.
think that, yep, sure, of course.
Thank you, Chris. Is it Sasa? I saw your hand, but then it went down, so I don't want to.
Oh, yeah, he was saying exactly what I was gonna say. But if I could add, is that sometimes we're caught up in the moment. You know, we have to go on as an organization, and sometimes there are aspects that get stuck, and we don't know why. And this set of hand tools that you've given us, it's really come through the detail of where we are at. And it was great to discover that even though we've advanced a lot in some aspects, there are some that are still basic that are not being taken care of, and that's why we were stuck in that. And so it wasn't that obvious at the moment, but now it's really obvious that, and it's the subject we're going to talk about today, which is the board of directors. We get used to certain dynamics in our boards of directors, and I didn't realize that some of these aspects that you're going to talk about today, we need to address to be able to really continue growing. That is not only about the money, it's not only about the project, it's about the infrastructure from within.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. So yes, today our topic is board governance and oversight. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be building each and every week that we're together, we're adding on. We did engage in completing a capacity assessment last week. We introduced you to our approach to that. We worked on that from a basic level and then also an advanced level. So we're going to get to that here in just a minute. Team, if we could go to slide 6. So just as a reminder, as it relates to the format that we have, Um, we definitely want to acknowledge the fact that each of you have different roles and you represent different nonprofit organizations, and we take that into consideration each and every week as we learn more about you and what your needs are. We also, just as a reminder, so we are focusing on 6 fundamental management topics or management functions. And the way in which we break down each work session or each workshop based on topic and content, we could very well have a workshop on each of those individual topics, but we only have a limited amount of time. So we've tried to frame what it is that we share with you in a way where we all walk away with the fundamentals, but also some practices that we can use after the Institute is over as it relates to accompanying those topics. Keep in mind that we do try to utilize interactive features. So sometimes if you have to step away and come back, we may be have moved along and may have folks engaged in hands-on kinds of work. And again, we're building as we go, both session by session, but within the session. And so our Institute, as it is virtual, we don't use a traditional webinar structure. So while you'll get all the slide decks and all of that and wraparounds, and you'll have that information, but when we are with you, we try to do all of our work in the session so that we minimize homework, we minimize pre-reading, we try to make sure we utilize all of our time, both hands-on and then also delivering the content. Each and every week, when you provide us with your feedback as it relates to the evaluations, we rework our sessions. So we debrief each week after these sessions and we review what it is that you share with us, and we try to make adjustments as we go. Sometimes we're able to satisfy all of those, sometimes we are not, but we just want to let you know that at the end of each session, please share with us any of your thoughts, perspectives, as it relates to the work that we do. And then also at the end of each session, we stay on and we have what we call an office hour concept. And so, or we host an office hour. So we stay on for about 10 or 15 additional minutes. You can stay behind if you have a specific question that you didn't want to or were not able to ask during the session. You're able to do that. So just want to remind you of what our format is. There are a lot of different ways in which we could deliver the Institute virtually, but what we have found is that in having some interactive features, utilizing some traditional webinar functions is kind of the way in which we've designed this. And again, please provide us with your feedback. Capacity building. Our capacity building framework, we introduced this to you last week. And if you recall, there are some different pieces to the puzzle. So we have a principles and practices guide. You receive that by electronically. And we also have that in a different iteration in your workbook. So you have it in 2 different ways. We have one principles and practices guide. There are 12 principles that are that we align with in this institute. As we've mentioned before, we focus on 6. There are 3 management conditions: build, thrive, and sustain, and you assess capacity as it related to those both on a basic level and an advanced level. There are 216 practices total. Yes, 216 across the 12 principles. And you were all introduced to those last week. In your workbooks, go to page 84 for me. And if you, I don't know if we need to put the digital link to the workbook in the chat again or not. But once we do that, if you don't have your workbook, please utilize it in that way. Okay. Next slide, please. So as we talk about capacity and capacity building and capacity assessment, again, we have it on the screen for you, but it's also on page 84. And then pay attention to the chat. Leslie just placed the link in the chat. In terms of thinking about capacity, we focus on a nonprofit organization's ability to manage the growth and development of their nonprofit to achieve its mission and vision. So when we talk about capacity, or as it relates to assessing capacity, that's what we're assessing: the ability of our nonprofit to grow and develop as a nonprofit organization. The capacity assessment, you were able to utilize that last week. Some of you referenced that in your reflection a few minutes ago. When we assess capacity, we are reviewing, we are examining the current management condition, if we are build, thrive, or sustain, as it relates to those specific practices. And again, we're looking at to what degree do we need to enhance in those areas. Capacity building, it's when we engage in strategies and techniques to grow and develop our nonprofit to achieve its mission and vision. And again, this is on page 84 in your workbook. So let's get to the results. So last week, each of you completed the assessment. And you looked at assessment as it relates to what you would like to work on in the next year. And what we did is we compiled that information so that we could kind of share that with you, and also so that we could model how you might be able to use this in your own organizations. Now, it's going to require that you have someone who facilitates assessing capacity, and then also gathering the data and the information and compiling it. And team, if we could go to the report. Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit about that everyone should have received their report?
Sure. Yeah, I have to, for some reason with my Adobe files, I have to log in order for me to view them.
So
okay. Let me log in.
No worries. All right.
If you'll mention that they were sent, that would be great.
Okay, perfect, yeah, perfect. So you should have received your individual assessments, and you should have also received the compiled assessment. So that would be everybody's information aggregated together. I'm going to go directly to the first of the 6 in terms of what the results were overall.
Yeah.
And
I did not send the aggregated results. We put that in the chat. So we'll put that in the chat for you all, and then I'll share my screen to go ahead and pop it in there. There we go. Hopefully.
Did everyone receive your individual one? Yes, perfect. So in terms of, so you're looking at your individual one, and you should, the cover page, and then the first page after the cover page is board governance. So you should be able to see just kind of where you landed as it relates to that. But collectively, most of us want to work on the first 2 practices under sustain. Most of us. And then what came in second was the first practice under build and the first practice under thrive. So we want to make sure that board members understand their responsibility as it relates to helping to raise funds. And we also want to make sure board members understand their responsibility to evaluate performance and to engage in training. We want to make sure that board members know the amount of time that they should engage with our nonprofit organization as a volunteer, And again, there is that helping with bringing resources or funds into the organization. Job descriptions, orientation, those types of opportunities are also something that we want to focus on as a collective. Program design, management, and evaluation. Most of us want to work on areas under sustain as it relates to matching the mission and vision with our programming and the needs in our community, securing funds, engaging in specifically evaluation that focuses on outcome achievement. And so those are some areas that we want to work on primarily or as a priority. And then I noticed in looking at the results under Build that and Thrive that all the practices are competing. So we want to, as a collective, we want to put time and attention. Over half of us want to put time and attention to these practices related to engaging our participants, hearing from our participants, and really the management function of program work is where the emphasis was there. Strategic planning. What rose to the top was implementing an action plan to guide the day-to-day operations, documenting our lessons learned. Those were at the top. And then the others kind of came in in close proximity to those first two. Nonetheless, there's a significant amount of attention that we want to give to strategic planning. Financial management. Now, what bubbled at the top here was the first practice under sustain. We want to identify and implement new revenue generating strategies. And we know that the philanthropic landscape, it has changed significantly. We also oftentimes, as of late, we're challenged with some of our grant funding, especially some of our federal grant funding. I think someone mentioned that earlier as you all were reflecting as well. And then also this desire or focus on strategizing around having a financial reserves and diversifying revenue. So those were what bubbled to the top there. Fundraising, focusing on planned giving, that was emphasized. And then recognition of contributions and thanking donors was another area that was illuminated in the results. Human resources, the number one was providing staff and volunteers with clear job descriptions and tools to do their work. And then what came next which was two competing under sustain, the having a succession policy and succession planning, and then support on ongoing leadership development and opportunities for our staff to grow professionally. So across the six principles or management functions that we're going to study, those were the results given there. Again, there's probably about 6 different assessment tools that we are able to utilize to assess capacity, and so there's not a lot of assessment tools out there, but there are other frameworks out there that can be used as it relates to assessing capacity. So again, we always start our institute off with assessing capacity, getting grounded in what it is that you want to focus on, so that as we're moving through each of the management functions in our work sessions each week, you're able to kind of go back to that to kind of monitor the degree to which you're able to garner information, resources from the sessions to help you with that in the coming year. So any initial reaction to what it is you see in your individual reports or anything that I shared in the capacity assessment of the group?
I
Any
think
initial?
I was just Leslie's put the results and findings in the chat for those of you who need this printed copy or to download it. It's there.
Yes, she did put
Yeah.
that link in there.
Crystal says we got a lot of work to do.
Uh, It looks like Rebecca is the one that posted it in the chat. So if you're scrolling back up, look for Rebecca Beck and
Okay.
you'll see the link to the results. Now, this is for the collective. And again, any of what we share with you, we're hoping that you're able to utilize these tools in practice. I did mention this last week. You may want to use like a 360-degree approach. You may have some staff complete it. You may have some board members complete it. You may have individuals that you consider to be key stakeholders in your organization and kind of look at kind of what they think and what their perspective is. Our topic today is board governance and oversight. And so what I find oftentimes when facilitating the strategic planning process with nonprofits in particular is that when we start off strategic planning with assessing capacity, especially with board members, there is quite a bit of capacity building that happens in that process because there are aspects of the day-to-day operations of what you do each and every day as employees of a nonprofit organization. There are aspects of what you do that board members are not necessarily aware of. And so when we work through all of us looking at capacity across those management functions, we're all educated and trained then on, oh, well, these are 12 management functions. This work is happening in some way, shape, or form, whether it's organized or not. The staff, the executive director is responding to activity and work as it relates to all 12 of these management functions, while we're looking at, 6 of them specifically. So again, if we're helping our board members understand the overall operations, it helps them to be able to engage with us and offer feedback, guidance, support, helps us to garner resources when they have a better understanding of what it is that we do overall. And I posed a question, so I'm gonna pause on my comments here. What is any reaction to your individual results or the collective results that we've shared and presented? Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we're going to transition into our topic for today. Please bring have some paper nearby, something to take notes on nearby when you come back, and we're going to jump right into our work, and we're going to move forward. I won't say fast, but steady. So when we get back, we're going to jump right into our material. We got quite a bit to cover. We're going to do some hands-on work, etc. But you have about 5 minutes. We're going to take a transition break. It's 10:21, so at 10:26, we'll be right back here to move into our new material. All right. So in terms of our next topic, board governance and oversight. So in your workbook, whether you're looking at it by way of the link or whether you have it in hand, we are looking at pages. And team, I want to make sure I got my pages right. Hold on a minute. I'm going to ask for your help just a little bit. Print everything off, y'all. So I'm still old school. I have things in hard copy. I have it digitally. I have it electronically. So we're looking at pages 31. I want to make sure I get this right. 31 through 42. So those are the pages in your workbook that we are referring to for today's session. So just want to make sure everybody knows kind of where we are in our workbook. And if you would, just take out turn to page 31 first. Get you to go there. Go to page 31 first. So what we're doing is we're taking a look at the board of directors as a whole, as a unified group, group of volunteers, and then as individual board members. And what you may find is that your particular nonprofit organization may actually have, kind of written out, this is who we are as a board, and this is how we identify an individual board member. And so I oftentimes like to help us to kind of think about, there are times when we are functioning as an individual board member based on what it is that we bring to our nonprofit organization. And then there is work that we do whereby we are a part of the board of directors as the governing entity, governing body that provides governance and oversight to the organization. So I do want to reference page 31 in terms of the board of directors. So the governing body of our nonprofit organization, and we have some legal and ethical responsibilities. Those are oftentimes laid out in our bylaws for our individual nonprofit organizations in terms of how we're supposed to work. And then oftentimes nonprofits will also have in those same bylaws specifically the role of the board member or the function of the individual board member. And so we are expected as board members to work on behalf of our nonprofit, to make sure it's successful, to make sure that it is doing the work that it is missioned to do. And so, again, board of directors, board member. We're going to dive into some details related to all of this, but in general, as we think about our board of directors, we are required, when our nonprofit applied to become a 501c3 organization, we had to provide to the Internal Revenue who our board members were. The same for the Secretary of State's office. We had to provide who our board members are. Now, I know some of you are representing nonprofit organizations that are 50 years old, 100 years old. Some of your organizations have a lot of history and they've been in existence for a very long time. My hope is that those bylaws and those incorporating documents have been reviewed and updated as needed over the years. So I can remember there's a nonprofit that I work with. I think they were started in like 1924. I mean, they've just a very old organization. And I was able to get my hands on their original articles and bylaws, and they were typed. And you could just kind of, you could see the difference in kind of where that organization started and where they were at that time. So, but we're going to do a deep dive into bylaws, but that is the place to start for us to, if we are not clear in that document in particular, if we are not clear and we have not been very specific about, well, how do we describe a board of directors for our agency? How do we describe a board member and what they do for our agency? That's a good place to start to enhance that document. I do want to pose a question as it relates to your board. And I'd like to hear maybe one or two. How would you describe your board of directors? Like, how would you describe your board of directors?
Say they are diverse, and yet I'm still learning how to tap into all of the talents of each one so that they are super engaged in the work that we do.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? How would you describe your board of directors?
I'll go. We have a pretty new board of directors after kind of 10 years of having the same founding directors. So we're really excited to bring in new folks, but they also don't have a lot of experience in nonprofit organization or leadership. And so that is a pretty interesting challenge that I think has pros and cons to it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And, thank you for sharing that, because it reminds me that, every cycle or every fiscal year, I'll say, whether your fiscal year is July to June or May to June or July to June, your board changes, or it potentially could change. So it could be that you're recruiting and bringing on, new folks, and folks are at different levels. They have a different level of understanding. And so it may be a good idea to start off every fiscal year with some kind of grounding, maybe, and have it as a part of a board meeting, not something extra. Maybe you add 15, 20 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning to just get everybody grounded in, okay, this is who we are as a board. This is how we function. Just kind of one-way communication type thing. Boom, 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 boom. Just so that we all are kind of grounded at the beginning of a fiscal year. So that's important to keep in mind. And then also, most of your board of directors has a set of officers. So you probably have a chair of the board, a vice chair of the board, a secretary, a treasurer, in terms of who your officers are, which make up what we call the executive committee. That makes up your executive committee. And so just in terms of just thinking about, kind of in general, fundamental to a nonprofit organization, you have a board, you have board members, you have officers, and those are the individuals that are providing the governance and oversight to your organization. And again, as we said last week, there will be aspects of what we cover that you may or may not have in place yet. And so work towards it, right? Work towards it. And try not to think that you've got to make all of these adjustments at one time. Kind of manage that accordingly as you do more work with your nonprofit. Team, if we could go to slide 17. And I do see some comments in the chat, in terms of how some of the boards are set up. And of course, every nonprofit has a different way in which you have decided that you're going to set up your board of directors, and that typically plays out in your bylaws. So here's a way in which we framed kind of getting started and thinking about board governance and oversight. So we are showing this image to just kind of help us to think about board governance and oversight as a science or an art or a combination, right? And so when we think about board governance and oversight as a science, what we are saying here is that what we're focusing on is the management of that nonprofit organization, the management of the nonprofit organization. And also in terms of which is laid out in the bylaws also, or the guidelines are there, but then also how our board is managed and how we should go about doing our board of director work. So science, management, art, leadership. Science, management, art, leadership in terms of an engaged and active board in thinking about that. So just a way to kind of, not to put us in a box, but to kind of compartmentalize the way in which we try to learn more about how to develop and grow our board of directors. Now, our session today is focused on management. It's focused on the science of an engaged and active board. So we're talking about the mechanics of managing a board of directors and guiding a board of directors through its work. Less about leadership in this session, more about the what we consider to be the fundamental aspect of it, which is the management part. Now, we do touch on some aspects of leadership, but most of our focus is related to how the board of directors goes about governing and providing oversight to the nonprofit that they are a part of. Can we go back to the gallery view for just a minute? How many of you are currently on a board, or you're currently on a board of directors? Let's see. All right. So I see I've got 3 frames here. So I see quite a few. So not only do you work, some of you probably, in a nonprofit organization, but you also serve on a board of directors as well. And how many of you, if you're not serving, you have served? Do we have anyone who has never served on a board? Never served on a board? Anyone? I see Crystal. Thank you, Crystal. Anybody else who've never served on a board? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for that. I just wanted to kind of gauge who we have in our space, in our room today. So again, our focus today is on the management of the board of directors, and it's also on really the fundamentals of what it is that we need to know about boards of directors and the work that they do. I mentioned a few minutes ago, keep in mind that when our nonprofit, regardless of if you're based in North Carolina or a different state, the origin of your nonprofit, when that group of individuals or that one person decided that they were going to start a nonprofit organization, they supplied or submitted articles of incorporation to their Secretary of State's office. And in doing so, had to include who those initial board members were. That is a question that is asked of us. The same is true once we did that within our state, and you decided that you wanted to apply, or your nonprofit wanted to apply for the 501c3 status, your nonprofit organization completed the 1023 application with the Internal Revenue. And when you completed that 1023 application, you had to include the articles from your state, and you also had to include your bylaws. So to submit that application for the 501c3 status, you had to include those 2 things. And I say that to help us to understand that those documents came before most boards were built out the way you probably see them now. And they are utilizing those resources to help guide their work. So if you're an executive director, I would imagine you've already reviewed and taken a look at those to kind of help you to understand that. If you're a board chair, I would imagine, or have served as a board chair, I would imagine you've taken a look at those documents to help you to understand that. Those are public record. So articles of incorporation. Now, our North Carolina Secretary of State has changed a little bit. When you go to the website now, they do ask you to create a login, I believe, in order for you to be able to access information. It used to be you could just go to the site, pull up any organization, look at their articles, not a problem. But they've added some steps in that in terms of being able to see that. Quite a few nonprofit organizations post their bylaws on their website. Not all do, but some do. So you can take a look at those there. I bring that up again because those two documents inform the work of the board of directors, and in some cases specifically the work of a board member. So just wanted to give you that backdrop in terms of knowing. So how do we even start to determine what a board of directors should be doing as it relates to governance and oversight? Are we all together? Reaction button, thumbs up. I see. Yeah, thank you. Just want to make sure that we are all together. Solomon, is that a hand up for a question, or is that a hand up
Yeah.
for you're with us?
Yeah, a quick question. I don't know if now's the right time. When it comes to the officers and their responsibilities, I know that's defined in our bylaws, and we had somebody come in as a new treasurer on our board, and in trying to figure out what his responsibility is, he was trying to look for other guidance from North Carolina, like laws about what does the treasurer specifically need to do, and was trying to get more detailed than what our bylaws were saying. And I'm wondering if there is officer-specific stuff that applies more globally, or that's defined by each organization's bylaws.
Mhm. It's a combination of both, and we're going to provide some material to you in this session, but it is a combination of both. So you may look to the literature to help you kind of, determine in essence what a treasurer's responsibilities are, but each nonprofit is uniquely different, and some roles and responsibilities of a treasurer may vary depending upon what the needs are of that particular nonprofit organization. So it's a combination of both. I always encourage nonprofits, customize your job descriptions of your officers to make sure it specifically aligns with what is needed by your nonprofit organization. But typically it's a combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our next task. So if you would make sure you have a piece of paper and you have a writing tool, pen, pencil, marker, crayon, whatever your choice is. And we're going to walk you through an exercise where you are going to take a pop quiz. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right, team, if you would go to slide 18. So what we're going to present to you is a org chart. And we're in that org chart to the left, we have 5 different items, if you will, or roles, if you will, or stakeholders that we want you to insert in the org chart where you see fit. And so you've got board of directors, the executive director, volunteers, staff, and 4 board committees. And so draw this on a piece of paper. This is not in the workbook. No, you're just drawing it on a piece of paper. So just draw this on a piece of paper and then fill in the roles, if you will. I think I saw that pop up in the chat. Someone was asking if it was in the workbook, but no, it's not. I'm hearing the Jeopardy music in my head while you're working on this. The structure of a nonprofit organization. We'll give you about 1 more minute. Okay, team, if you would take us back to the gallery view. And hold up your image for me, folks, in your window. I'm leaning in so I can see. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm switching over here to frames so I can see. Perfect. All right. So we all took the pop quiz, right? We all took the pop quiz. All right, team, if you would show the org chart filled in on the screen. All right. So how many of you got all of these correct? So at the top of the org chart is the board of directors. And we had 4 board committees. And so 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next level is the executive director. Then we've got nonprofit staff. Notice the executive director is working directly with the staff, but also in some cases working directly with the volunteers. And we could have added some other roles, of course, to this chart, but fundamentally, it is important for us to recognize that our board of directors really provides the leadership and the guidance of the nonprofit organization with work and help through committees. And then also that board of directors is working directly with the executive director. Now, what you don't see here is you don't see a box that literally says executive committee, but the executive committee is made up of the officers, and you might incorporate that in this org structure in the way that best aligns with how your nonprofit works. But you've got the board of directors, and typically those officers are your executive committee. And then you have other committees. So you might have a fundraising committee. You might have a communications or marketing committee. You might have a program committee. You might have a personnel or human resource committee. It varies from nonprofit to nonprofit. It's based on what it is that your nonprofit needs. And then, of course, the executive director, the staff, and volunteers. Now, as it relates to an org chart, keep in mind, we design org charts uniquely in alignment with the way in which your nonprofit works and how that structure is set up. Any initial reaction to what we have presented here? Any initial reaction to what we have here? Sas, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Sasa.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Salome Sandoval, but it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my initial reactions before I read all this information, I would have thought that the executive director was at the top. But as I've been learning more in this booklet, the board of directors is at the top. I mean, we do work side by side, but it is interesting to see how much more important that hierarchy is. And then the committees.
Exactly. And keep in mind, Every nonprofit is different. But fundamentally, if we are less an executive director, what we have left is our board. And so just kind of think about it in that way. You may very well operationalize your nonprofit as of course, the executive director is the CEO. Chris, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I think that one of the things I really like to see is our board of directors more involved with the volunteer as well. I know there's no direct line to it, but I think it speaks volumes when the board of directors is involved in some way with the volunteers. That's just my only comment about that.
Absolutely. And oftentimes that does happen. Some board members will go and actually volunteer with the programs and services that are provided. Some board members, you might even see them on site, at off times other than board meetings. And then some board members also will be at different events and so on and so forth. So you get to see them. Jackie, then Sarah, then Sam. That's the way I see it on my screen. So, Jackie.
Sure. So, just in response to Sasa, something that really has it's been ingrained in my brain that our board of directors is who's legally, fiscally responsible for absolutely everything, and which is why every board really should have insurance because the board of directors insurance because every single individual board member could be gone after technically. That's kind of how I have in my brain. They are the ones really responsible. And then in response to, I think it was Chris that was just speaking. I was the first executive director hired, even though we had been around for 30 something years. So we went from a really hardcore working board to now a governing board, but it came to a point where that they were hands-on all the time, that giving up that they were making decisions operationally, which was really the executive director's role. So we, for a period of time until we were able to really separate duties, we had a period of time where not that we didn't want them here in the shelter, but we just need to make sure there's a line between being a volunteer and a board member because they are so different.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for sharing that. Sarah?
Thank you. And I'm glad I'm following Jackie because my question kind of bleeds into her statement. I recognize that as executive director, I serve at the pleasure of the board. And also, I have spoken with the board about viewing themselves also as volunteers. That they are also volunteers because sometimes I feel like the board develops kind of an elitist stature among the organization. And I think it's important that they recognize that they too are also volunteers and that their skill set might be different and how they contribute to the organization is different than, maybe someone who's shelving product or, whatever, we're a food pantry. And so I don't know, Dr. Palmer, I might like you to address that. Like, how do we work? Of course, what Jackie said is true, that there's a lot of decisions and legal liability and a lot of responsibility that lies on the board. And also, they are part of the volunteer population and like men and women of the people. And so how do we coach them to view themselves that way?
One, you're talking about culture, and culture shifts take time. I have worked with boards of directors who start the nonprofit. They've been hands-on. They've been doing operations. They've taken their commitment very seriously, and they've looked after the best interest of the organization. And then, along comes an executive director that they hire that now is going to take on some of those day-to-day operations tasks. I will tell you that it takes time, that you are working through a culture shift, and that the executive director is helping to drive that. So working along with your board chair to help with that messaging, to help to continue to help the board make the adjustment. And I will tell you, it is hard for some board members to do that. Sometimes we have to kind of work with them until they get there. But I do think training, helping them understand fundamentally how nonprofits operate in general, not necessarily specific to your organization, that does help to move them along in that way. But you're really talking about a culture change and a
Yeah,
culture
sorry,
shift.
real quick, Sarah. Sarah, I think in terms of us, we had a few board members that said, "Oh, well, I came and I walked dogs twice this past month. I'm a great board member." We were like, "Hold on. That is, yes, you're a volunteer board member. You're volunteering your time. You're not paid as a board member, but walking dogs is not the equivalent of being a great board member. Those are not board duties." That was kind of our separation that we had to do.
What I will say to that is I'm going to caution all of us. Let's go to gallery view because I want to caution all of us. What works for one nonprofit may not necessarily work for another. So I want to caution us on those of us who are executive directors. You look at your organization, you look at what your organization needs, you determine how you need your board to be engaged, and then you work with your board to get there. That is an approach to take. But I don't want us to think that the way one nonprofit describes being active and engaged as being the same for you. It may be very, very different. So just kind of keep that in mind. There are some general fundamentals, which is what we cover in this session. However, each organization has customized their bylaws and customized your expectations of what it is you desire from your individual board members. So keep that in mind, okay? Sam.
Yeah, thank you. You might have even mentioned this earlier and I missed it, but I know you said that all nonprofits are different, but I'm curious, should there be, or do you recommend that there be 4 committees? Because our board currently has 3, and I wasn't sure if that's like, yes, you should have 4, or if that's a
Thank you for
suggestion.
that. That was for the purpose of the exercise.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is, again, you'll probably say now, if she says that one more time, we get it. The way in which your board is structured and the way in which your board works should be customized to meet your needs. Because what works for one may not necessarily work for the other. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that we have subsectors within the nonprofit arena. We have some nonprofits that are education, colleges and universities carry a nonprofit status. We have some nonprofits that are food pantries. We have some nonprofits that are homeless shelters. We have some nonprofits that are health and human service. I mean, you know where I'm going. Some of our nonprofits are churches. And so when you are reviewing and or crafting those bylaws, look at what your mission and your vision is and the work that either you're doing or that you're anticipating. And you should be setting up the structure of your board to align with that. And then go from there. And then as you go along, if there's something that you have in place that's not working and you feel like you need to change it, you can change it. But initially, there are, kind of these fundamental aspects of the way in which nonprofits are structured and the way in which the board of directors is set up. Does that make sense to everyone?
Thank you for that.
Uh-huh. Any other initial reaction before we go on to our next topic?
A quick question. Just a quick question, Dr. Palmer. Board matrix, staff development. Talk a little bit about just when you think about board development, how important is it to have a board matrix in terms of bringing the right levels of backgrounds around, roles of responsibility, putting together that matrix. As I look at our board operational model, our board development model, we've been around 30 plus years. Our founder was the founder of PEJ. We've had some board members that have now just left. I think this was a question that Jackie brought, and we've got new board members. but how important is a board matrix in terms of adhering to the mission and the vision of the organization?
A matrix is a helpful tool. You know, to be able to identify what is needed, and then you're working to fulfill those needs by using the matrix as a tool. The matrix in and of itself doesn't do anything until you operationalize it. So you're building a matrix. That concept is you're building a matrix of the talent, the skills, the characteristics of the type of board members that you think will serve your nonprofit well. And then you work to try to recruit and bring on board those individuals that align with those needs that you've identified. And I think I see Solomon's hand.
Yeah, I had a question about the committees displayed here, reporting under the board. And is it pretty universal that the chair of the board is responsible for appointing the chairs of those committees and directing those committees? And is there any kind of standard practice on how the ED relates to those committees, or is that really organization specific?
It is all organization specific. It is, I keep saying that, but it is just true to the nth degree. So when you think about your committee structure in your bylaws, you should have, especially your standard committees, you should have identified what those committees are, the purpose of those committees, and if those committees have chairs, which typically they do, you identify what the responsibility of the chair is. That's typically determined at the onset. But again, as nonprofits grow and they develop, how those committees work may change, and what the responsibilities of those committees also may change. I do think it's a good idea to have the executive director working very closely with the board chair. And then the board chair is working very closely with the chairs, and the executive director is a part of those triads, if you will. Executive director, board chair, and chair of committees. Again, every organization is different, and so there's no one way to set that up. But it's what works best with your organization, because there are some competing factors. For example, board members are changing on a regular basis. The organization is changing. Sometimes, our organizations change because we change them, and sometimes we get some external factors that come into play, and then they change because of that. But always kind of go back to what is it that we need, and how do we need this committee to work with us or support the work of the organization as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw another hand.
I have a question. Okay, so I know I mentioned this last time, but I want to get like all the knowledge that I can. So I'm like 2 weeks into my new role as the executive director, and I have my first board meeting next month. And I want to go into because I know there's already a culture that has already been set based off, past meetings and whatnot. But I feel like I don't have enough knowledge about the culture of the board. And I don't want to go into the meeting with like all these expectations, because like I'm learning like the board is my bosses, but I still need to understand the expectations that have been set for the board so I can understand like what I'm depending or leaning on them for, as well as, their expectations of me. So what would be your advice as far as going into that meeting, understanding the expectation that was set prior to me, and like what I can expect moving forward?
I would consult with the board chair.
Okay.
I would consult with the board chair and any of those individuals that have been on the board, let's say a year or more. Your board chair should be able to support you in how you frame that meeting, give you some idea as to what happened prior. And then, is it Ariane? Ariane, you can also join us at the end of the call. for our office hour as well. And I can go into a little bit more detail, but your board chair should be able to give you some insight and perspective on that.
Okay.
Did I see another? Okay. All right, team, let's go to composition. Slide 19. So board composition, which is what we've been talking about here for a few minutes here in the session. So again, in our bylaws and or articles, and some of your nonprofits may be advanced in a way, you might even have a policies and procedures for your board members or for the board of directors. That could very well be the case. But you want to think about the demographics and the characteristics of the folks that are going to make up your board. How many board members in your bylaws, there should be a minimum number of board members that are expected. And then also it may be that in your bylaws, there's some demographic and characteristical information that helps you with that as well. The matrix was mentioned earlier. Organizations use a matrix to identify what skills we need, what professional expertise do we need, what experience do we need, and what education. You could add more to that if you'd like, but you're determining what it is that your board of directors needs more so. Any connections that they have, influence that they have, you're looking at what is it that our board needs. The one committee I didn't mention is the board governance committee. That is a committee. Sometimes the executive committee serves as the governance committee as it relates to that. And then again, just want to lift up, once you place those officers in their roles, the chair is the chair of the executive committee, and those officers typically have a cadence of meeting and working with the executive director. If you're fortunate to have a paid executive director, some nonprofits have a volunteer executive director before they get to hiring someone. But that executive director and that executive committee, they should be working as partners, and they should be working in lockstep to accomplish what is needed for the organization. Sarah, I see your hand.
Thank you. As we are looking at potential board members, of course, it's important that different folks have, different areas of representation and different sorts of skill sets. How important do you think it is also that they have previous engagement with the organization? Like, for example, we'd like to get an attorney on the board, right? And so, is it important that we find an attorney who is involved in the past with the organization, or is it just important that we find an attorney to represent and help us, on the board?
If I were your consultant, I would need a little bit more information to help you to draw that conclusion. But I have to go back in this context to what is it that you need? Do you need an attorney to help with legal matters? Is that more of a priority in general, or do you need one that actually has experience with your agency? Some nonprofits require, before, as a part of the onboarding process, some nonprofits require their board members to volunteer. Yeah. So, you could build that into your recruitment strategy if you'd like, but without a little bit more detail about why you're posing that question.
Right.
You just have to kind of gauge that based on what's the priority for you right now.
Thank you.
Team, can we show the example of the matrix, of the board matrix? So we want to show you an example of a board matrix. And Rebecca, are you going to, is that Rebecca? Or Leslie? I'm looking, I've got such, I can't, we're not on gallery. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Leslie is sharing. And Leslie, can you increase the size a little bit, if possible? Essentially, thank you, there we go. That's a little better. You can kind of see, and you can, if you're a member, you can find, I'm pretty sure that we have a template for this in our resource library that you can access, but you can also just Google a template for a board matrix worksheet if you don't have one. And you'll find something similar to this. And what it allows you to do is to go ahead and map out, number of current members, board members for each of these different expertise and leadership qualities. Some of these may not apply to you, so you feel free to delete those rows and that sort of thing. And then you get number of prospects, perhaps, like if you're thinking, okay, we're working with our current board members to find someone to fill this role of maybe someone who is an expert in law or real estate, for example, and then you can keep track in there. And then you've got your total members, and it should have formulas in there to help you add things up. What's another category? We got resources. So these are all very important, and you can always add to these. Your board matrix should allow you to customize it to your organization. So you want to be able to add maybe there's certain resources that you're looking for. Community connections, always really important, right? We want to know that they're connected to the community. Yes, we'll share this template. Their personal style. This is interesting. You might have some really unique things that you want as a part of that category. And then we get into more demographic type information of age, gender, race, ethnicity. We want to be sure that our board is representative of the community that we're serving. So we want to make sure that we have a good sample of folks coming from all walks of life that represent our community that we're serving through our programs, okay? And we'll put that, Leslie, can you pop that in the chat for folks to download if they'd like? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca and Leslie. Thank you for that. And I also noticed in the chat that there's quite a bit of chatter about some folks are posing some questions, and so I'm going to give you about 60 seconds to just scroll through the chat. There's some folks that have posed some questions, and there's some suggestions and recommendations there. So there may be something that is helpful to you in that way as well. So just as a FYI, we just put the matrix, the board matrix link. So you might want to go ahead and grab that so you don't miss the opportunity to do that. And team, if we could go back to the gallery view. Board governance is always a hot topic. It is always a hot topic.
Can I make a statement, Dr. Palmer?
Sure.
This is Monica.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we've had a lot of conversation, and I mean, just looking at, the feedback that's in the chat as well as what has been discussed, and kind of piggybacking on your answer to someone about, the consulting, what you need and things of that sort. I mean, it also shows where documentation is the key. Like when you start noticing that these are things that are gaps in your organization or gaps in your board, start writing those down. Like, what are those things that possibly that you may need to expound more on and to be able to reference? And I know for the board that I was on for years, as well as being the president, when there were gaps like that, the ED actually, he was a paid person. And so he also reached out to other organizations that were very helpful to be able to share like how they did things, to see if that was something like once he's noticed a gap or we noticed a gap on the board, like, oh, let's look at, I think if I'm not mistaken, he went to talk with the Durham missions, rescue mission, because it was similar to the organization that we had. And so building those type of partnership and bridges really helps. What I observe helps to identify those gaps, also fill those gaps. And for me, what I experienced, documentation was the key. And one of the things on the board that we actually created a committee that actually focused on looking at the documentation and auditing the documentation. Once the documentation is done, it is not there just to collect dust. It is there to build in the process, here again, in the documents, in the process procedure documents, where you begin to look at that to see is there any gaps? Is there any things we need to modify or enhance? I just want to mention that because I know I've been talking in the chat with different people of how you put certain roles and certain responsibilities. And I will go back and echo what you say. It depends on the organization itself and the needs of the organization. But once you see it there, document it, put it on a to-do list or parking lot list of the things you want. To me, documentation has been key.
Thank you for that comment and those comments, Monica. Yes, and I think also don't be afraid to make a mistake. Like think practically. If you think about it in terms of how to manage a group of people so that they're all moving in the same direction with the bylaws as the guide, and then kind of continue to build that way. Again, it can be challenging with turnover. It can be challenging in that regard, but I think it's also just as important to think practically as well. Okay, we're about to transition into one more task, and then once we do that, we're going to take a break. So just real quick, turn off your camera, well, I'm the only one that has the mic on. I was going to say turn off your mic. Turn off your camera. I'm going to leave mine on. But turn off your camera. And if you're able, stand up. If you're able, stand up. We're taking a stretch break. That's what that is. It's a stretch break. We've been at it for a minute. We're going to do one more task. And after we do that task, we are going to take an official break. We're going to take an official break. You can turn your cameras back on. Hopefully that helped us to transition into this activity. I want to make sure that we complete this activity. The other thing I want to say too is that thank you to everyone who either is serving on a board or who has served on a board. It is not an easy volunteer role to have, depending upon what your organization is experiencing at the present time, right? So I just want to extend a thank you for volunteering to be on a board, volunteering to be in an officer role, volunteering to give your time in ways that you may have not planned, just because your nonprofit is growing and developing and it's moving and it's vibrant. And so the nonprofit definitely changes. Sometimes it feels like in a nanosecond. So thank you for your service. If you are serving and or if you've ever served on a board. And for those of you who haven't, I'm thanking you in advance because I know you're going to serve on a board at some point in time. So thank you. We appreciate you helping to grow and build your community and make your community better, stronger, greater, and helping the people that you help, or the environment, or animals, or whatever the focus is at your nonprofit. Just know that we appreciate you here at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofit, and we know that serving on a board is not one of the easiest things to do, but it's definitely a rewarding thing to do. Okay, team, let's go to slide 20. Take out a piece of paper for me. You're going to be filling in a table for me. Filling in a table. So we've talked about board governance and we've talked about board oversight, and we've got some hangers here. So think about board governance as being what we do as board members to protect the organization, to protect the nonprofit. And then think of oversight as what we do to ensure that the organization is successful, right? And so oversight, accomplishing that mission, pursuing the vision, having success, and governance, protecting the organization as a 501c3, if that's what your tax determination is, but protecting the organization. Now, we could have had more than 4 items listed here, more than 4 spaces. So what comes to mind for you when you think board governance for a nonprofit focused on protecting that nonprofit? What comes to mind for you, board oversight, when it comes to ensuring the nonprofit is successful as a board member? So how does a board of directors demonstrate governance, and how does the board of directors demonstrate oversight? Go ahead and fill that in for us on your sheet of paper that you have. Board governance versus board oversight. And we mentioned also that board governance, we view it more so as the management of the board, the management of what we do, and the oversight as the leadership. So engaging in leadership. So go ahead and determine kind of 4 ways in which you view a board of directors demonstrating governance. Where's my Jeopardy music? Every time we do this, I think about having that music going. Okay. All right, team, if you would go ahead and, so I want you to compare and contrast what we have identified as board governance versus board oversight. And again, we could have listed many more kind of ways of thinking about this, but fundamentally, we want you to kind of understand governance as a way, or as in terms of the role of the board when we're stewarding the mission and the vision. So when we started our nonprofit organizations, we had to submit articles of incorporation to the state. We had to complete a 1023 application to the Internal Revenue, and we had to tell the Internal Revenue what our mission is and what our vision is. We had to describe the work that we were going to do as it relates to the nonprofit that we are a part of. Also, governance is about partnering with the executive director to ensure that the organization is protected. And so a lot of times we might find ourselves leaving everything to the ED. I would encourage us as board members to see ourselves more as a partner, and that because sometimes things will go really well, and that's great. And then sometimes we might have some bumps in the road. And so in either or, regardless of the state we're in, we should be partnering with our ED, sharing our skills, knowledge, and expertise, is another way to protect the organization, and also ensuring compliance with legal requirements. And we're going to do a little deep dive into that a little later here in the next hour. But steward the mission and vision, partner with the ED, share skills, knowledge, and expertise, ensure compliance with legal requirements. You can also customize this list for your nonprofit in terms of how you view protecting your agency. Oversight, ensure that the work is happening. So ensure that the organization is doing the work. Evaluating the performance of the executive director. What I find oftentimes with our nonprofit organizations is that sometimes we're off schedule with evaluating the performance of our EDs. And in all fairness to them, we should have a regularly scheduled evaluation of the individual that we're paying to do the work or to lead and oversee the work of the nonprofit. Provide resources to do the work, and then expect accountability and transparency in terms of the success of the organization. We could add more items to this list, as I mentioned before, but recognize that each of our organizations are different. There is no magic. I wish there were, but there isn't. There is no magic. There is no one recipe. Each nonprofit organization is different, and so we have to kind of make sure that we're establishing what the ways in which we protect versus the ways in which we ensure success of the organization. In the literature, when you look up information about boards of directors of nonprofits, typically it's going to come up under board governance, board oversight. That's typically how that shows up. Okay, let's go back to gallery. We're going to go into a break. How are we doing? Give me some reaction. We all together? I know that was a whole lot of information that we've covered. But again, we want to make sure that we fundamentally share with you what it is that is needed as we learn more about board governance. All right. So the time is 11:29. So let's just say it's 11:30, give you those few seconds. We're going to come back. Let's do 7 minutes. Then that gives me a little bit of wiggle room there. So let's come back at 11:37.
Great. And Dr. Palmer, when we come back, can we address Kate's question? I think it was
Sure.
Kate. We'll come back and address that one. Yeah. Thanks.
All right, let me take a look while we're on break.
Okay.
Am I dating myself when I say I'm reminded of Welcome Back, Carter? Do you all remember that show? Welcome Back, the song Welcome. Okay, I'm dating myself a little bit, but anyway, was it? Yeah, everything happened in that classroom. Well, not everything, but most everything happened in that classroom. All right, well, welcome back. There was a question in the chat that I wanted to answer, and it was related to resources. So in the visual, we had an item listed, provide resources to do the work. And the question was, is that fundraising or expertise? And I would say it's both, depending upon what's needed. And it could be other resources too. It could be material, it could be program material. It could be program supplies. It could be, those resources could be, or thought of as being whatever is needed in that regard. But yes, fundraising and or expertise would be what we're talking about there. All right, so the next topic we're going to focus on, which we've actually been doing that the entire time that we've been in session today, is the duties and expectations. The duties of the board of directors, the duties of a board member, and then one of the bullet points that we have listed here too is being in attendance at board meetings or committee meetings, as it relates to what you've committed to on the board of directors that you represent. In thinking about the duties and expectations, the one thing I want to lift up is that, and I kind of alluded to this before the break, but think about a situation with the board that you represent now or that you're considering, and it has an executive director or it has a CEO. Think about the possibility of finding yourselves without a CEO or without an ED. So, for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be negative, but for whatever reason, you find that your CEO or ED position is vacant or it becomes vacant abruptly. So when we think about duties and expectations, it is the expectation that the board is going to work on or support in some way or help fill the gap. And that can be done in a variety of ways. When everything is going well, then, our attention is different as a board of directors or as a board member. But when things are not going well within the organization, then the board, remember that org chart we set up? We showed, then the board is the default in terms of working to get things back on track. It may be that as a board member, I might be asked to do something that I hadn't anticipated because we didn't anticipate that we would find ourselves in certain situations. And so I do encourage, if you are a board chair and you're on this call, if you are an ED right now and you're on this call, you have a little bit of it. Well, and even as a board member, you can recommend it, to your peers on the board. Have a conversation about, well, what if something were to happen and our ED was not available, or we didn't have an ED or a CEO in that seat? What would we do? I was about to say that's very different than succession planning. It aligns with succession planning, let me put it that way. But you might find yourselves in that type of scenario. And so, or if you find that the organization is being negatively challenged in a way that's causing the way in which you do business to be not as synchronized, or maybe you're a little off in terms of how things are happening, how will you as a board respond to that? Because the community is relying on you as the leaders of that organization to protect the people that the organization serves. So, just kind of keep that in mind, because I serve on a couple of boards, have served on boards for years and chaired boards. And you can never really predict what you might have to work through. And so I would encourage you to start having those scenario type conversations as a board. Donna.
Good morning, everyone. So as the ED, I've been talking about we needed to have a succession plan for years. 11 days ago, I had a stroke, and my board, I told my board everything, and I guess my expectation and the reality was two different things. So the expectation to me was like, okay, you guys know, like, you need to do something, you need to, rally your troops, whatever. It was a couple of days of communication with my board chair as to how I was doing, and then everything dropped. So to them, it seems like there is no, like that, for me as a person, but also as an ED, that made me think about what a succession planning need to look like right now. And their thing is, well, she got it. She fine. She up, she moving, she whatever. And that scares me a lot for capacity and sustainability, but also like that doesn't, maybe it's just me, but it doesn't feel like that's a lot of care for the person that y'all hired to do this job for it to be sustainable for me also. So I definitely, and I'm a chair of other boards, and like there is no way that I would not be thinking about who if something happened to you, what? Yeah. So all that to say is that like this is really important. We may think that there's lots of time to do this work, to do that work, but actually no, there isn't. Like it needs to be done from day one.
Thank you, Donna, for sharing and disclosing that. And I pray that your your recovery is going well. But thank you for sharing that. And you have some thoughts and some consideration for you and where you are and what you've shared in the chat. But thank you for sharing that. And that is a real example of what it is that I am referring to. That should something happen and the ED or CEO is not able to do the work. And again, it doesn't always necessarily have to be challenging and hard, but we should be thinking about, well, how would we fill that gap? And how will we also take care of the people that are involved? Definitely taking care of our ED and our the folks that are staffed with the agency and the board as a whole, but also the community and the people that are being served, because that's a significant gap when our leader, when our ED or CEO is not able to be able to do the work that they've been doing. So again, I just want you to kind of think about that as it relates to the duties and expectations. Because for the most part, many of us who sign up to volunteer to serve on a board, we're not necessarily volunteering to be the ED or to be the CEO. That's necessarily what we're signing up for. But I do think we need to be oriented to, should something like that happen, what will we do and how will we move forward? Team, can we go to slide 22? So what we've been talking about are the duties and the expectations. I do want to turn your attention to page 32 in your workbook, and where we are lifting up duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience. Duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. These are best practices. These are fostered into the literature as it relates to the duties and responsibilities of a board member and as a board of directors as a whole. So we are expected to engage in taking care of our nonprofit. And so being a good steward, making sure that we are aligning with any kind of legal or financial matters that we have, that we are being good stewards and we are shepherding those things as appropriate, that we're faithful, that we are not engaging in any type of conflict of interest, not showing up for personal benefit or personal gain, and demonstrating that through duty of loyalty, and then duty of obedience, upholding the laws and the policies and the mission of the organization. So these are pretty standard. And when you think about, someone mentioned earlier that our nonprofit organizations are expected to have directors' liability insurance. And and in doing so, we as board members are expected to function and to be a part of the work of the nonprofit in the context of taking care of it, being loyal to it, and being obedient to those policies and expectations that we've put forth. So I want to draw our attention there. I've already mentioned the bylaws, kind of referencing your specific bylaws, but also go to page 33, board responsibilities, board responsibilities. And so there's a checklist there of responsibilities as a board or board of directors. And I want you to take a look at that list. And if there's anything on that list that you don't understand, please let me know. So I'm going to just pause for a couple minutes. Again, this is board member responsibilities or board of directors responsibilities as it relates to the duties and expectations. And of course, we are expected to attend our meetings and to be present when there's a request made for us to represent the organization. And team, if we could go to the gallery view, that would be great. So board responsibilities checklist. And also, if you do not have the workbook, does everybody have the link? Were you able to open the link? I don't want to assume. Okay, good. So when you look at this list of board responsibilities, and again, you can customize what this looks like for your individual nonprofit organizations. Is there anything that you see here that you're not quite sure?
Dr. Palmer, the preserving institutional differences. Give me an example of that. Maybe we did it on our board and we just didn't phrase it that way. Can you give me an example of that?
Absolutely, and that's more or less what that is. But if you remember when we started off our session last week, we talked about brave space, safe space, and we talked about just kind of acknowledging one to another and ensuring that this is a safe space, brave space.
I got you. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, the way it was worded, I was just like, okay, maybe she means something else. I just wanted to be clear. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. And then I also saw Court of Appeal. So depending upon the type of nonprofit that you have, there may be situations that surface where you might have a participant in a program, or you might have some aspect of your organization that there might be some disagreement, there might be some misalignment with the individual or groups interfacing or interacting with that organization. And sometimes those issues are presented to the board. And so you kind of serve as this is a place where stakeholders, constituents of that nonprofit might come before your board, or you might request to have an exchange with stakeholders if there are situations arise that warrant that. And so sometimes the board finds itself, having to deal with those kind of matters. The hope is that you won't have to deal with that a lot, but there are instances where that's the case. I chair a board right now, and we have because of the type of work that it is, it's not a formal 501c3 nonprofit entity, but it is a network of nonprofit organizations. And we actually have an appeals committee that we convene on an as needed basis. So it's slated as a committee, appeals committee. It's slated as that. And that way, if there's something that comes up, a grievance or something like that, then, we have an apparatus in place to focus on that. So that's what that is. Is there anything else on this list that you say, I kind of don't really know what that is? Okay. The next thing that we want to show is a sample of bylaws. And so the team is going to, now hopefully you have at your disposal the bylaws for your agency. So keep in mind now, we're talking about board governance and oversight. And the springboard for how we engage in board governance and oversight are the bylaws and the articles. That gets us started. And so if you've never taken a look at your bylaws for your organization, I would encourage you to, be familiar with what is in there, because it actually helps to frame the duties and the expectations of board members or the board of directors. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. So I'm going to pause here and let the team pull up the sample bylaws. And so these are a set of bylaws that I assisted with writing for this particular organization. And so we just wanted you to kind of be able to kind of see this. But my hope is that if you are associated, that the nonprofit that you are affiliated with, that you've had an opportunity to look at those bylaws. In the bylaws, you're going to have a space for the name of the organization. You're going to have, you can scroll to Article 2. You're going to have a space for the mission and kind of the way in which the organization works. So the purpose of the organization. If it is a membership organization, like a professional association, or maybe there's a member, come back down to 3, I'm sorry. If there's a need to have members to make up your nonprofit, then you would have a section related to that. And then typically there's a space for when you meet, where you meet, how long you meet. There's also typically a space for how many, the term limits for your board members. There should be some notice in there that there's no monetary compensation for board members. There's also a way in which you vote. So there's a description of how you vote on items or how you take action on specific items. Quite a few of the bylaws will have like the typical order of business for a board meeting. And so typically that is included. Again, the relationship between the board of directors and the executive director, oftentimes that's there. In recent years, when I've assisted groups with writing bylaws or editing bylaws, I've encouraged them to put a section in the bylaws that explains the executive director's role, and that explains the board of directors' role in comparison. So I think that's very, very helpful, so that board members stay in their lane, board chairs stay in their lane, and EDs and CEOs know exactly what's expected. So that's there. What we have highlighted here is if the expectation is for board members to give a financial contribution, you can also incorporate that. That is a decision that you would have to make as a nonprofit. There's a section in the bylaws. Carmen, I'll come back to you in just a minute. There's a section in the bylaws for officers. Some of you asked about, well, what are the roles of the officers? Typically, there's a narrative in the bylaws that explains that. Team, you can keep going. You can keep going. There's a section typically if you have committees, especially if you have standing committees, there's a section, and there's typically a section that explains how you amend bylaws. So if you need to change the bylaws, there's a section that related to that. And this is a real fundamental framing for bylaws that you're looking at here. And then what's after that? Team, I think that's it. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So we can go back to the gallery view. So the bylaws are pretty significant. Carmen, you had a question.
I did. So when you were talking about putting the or explaining the roles of the board of directors and the ED in the bylaws. We just updated our bylaws and it was a practice process. So I'm working, I'm chair of the governance committee in our organization. We're getting ready to work on standard operating procedures. So rather than trying to update the bylaws again, could we do that? Could we put the expectations of the roles and responsibilities in the standard operating procedures instead
You
of the
absolutely
bylaws?
can.
Okay.
Yes, you absolutely can. Yes. We do want to share a resource, the legal compliance checklist, and the team is going to share that with you. This is a resource that the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits has. I think it's something that you need to have at your fingertips, especially the way it's organized. And what it does is it provides a checklist of how to maintain compliance as a nonprofit organization. So they're going to share some information with you about the legal compliance checklist.
All right, let me make this big so y'all can see it. Oops.
Thank you, Rebecca.
There we go. Yep. Share my screen real quick. So this file gets updated annually. The revised version will be coming out this month in connection with our legal compliance workshop that we talked about last week. It's coming up. It starts this Friday. We'll share more information about that series at the end of today's session, but wanted you to just get a preview of this file. It is available for download for free by all members. There's a small charge for non-members, and I'll put the link in the chat. I would encourage, if you're going to be paying for it, to just wait until the new version is announced, so you'll get that. It'll be coming out later this week. So this is just as an example of the way that it's laid out. You can see there's check boxes here. It talks about the different types of things you need to do to remain in compliance. Not all of these apply to all nonprofits. It depends a lot about how you're structured and those sorts of activities that you engage in, that sort of thing. It tells you who has to do whatever that legal compliance is, and then how and when to do it as well. So this is a great tool that you can use amongst your staff and board members, if board is involved in this process at all. I know for some organizations we have working boards, but this is just a great way to kind of stay up to date on what is required of you as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, and you can find all the details in here about everything that is expected and required of you, with links to different forms and whatnot. So it's a great tool. I always recommend that when members join the center that they download this, they download our Principles and Practices Guide, they sign up for a course, they request a pro bono volunteer to help them. I sort of give them a list of things that I think is good to do to see the value of their membership right away. So yeah, I think that's it for that. I'll put the link in here for the page where we provide this this resource for download. But like I said before, I would wait until next week or so if you're going to be paying for it, if you're a non-member, then you can go ahead and get the most updated version.
Thank you for that. And team, if we could go to slide 24. So just to kind of continue, that didn't come out quite right. But just to continue with focusing on, as a board member, as a board of directors, kind of what we need to pay attention to. Financial management and fundraising responsibilities are also a part of what we are, of the expectations of a board of directors or board members. If you look at page 34, we've kind of given like a little quick reference in terms of fundraising. And friend raising is also a way in which we identify with that. We have a whole session on fundraising, so we're going to come back to that. We have a whole session on financial management, so we will come back to that. And then also as a board, someone asked about resources earlier. Human resources is an area where we as a board should be focusing on to make sure that we have the people in place to actually help us do the work that we need to do. So that's important for us to kind of think about as it relates to that. Team, go ahead to slide 26. So funding the human resources is again a focus that we should pay attention to. And thinking about, we talked about the matrix for the board itself, but also in terms of board recruitment and retention, but employee recruitment and retention, professional development of staff and board development, and capacity building in general. We as a board should be paying attention to what those needs are and helping our nonprofit organization secure those resources. And so these are, again, just some areas of focus as it relates to the human capacity of our nonprofit as we govern and as we provide oversight to the nonprofits that we represent. I do want you to turn in your workbooks to page 36, 37, 38, and 39. Team, if we could go back to gallery, that would be great. So I want to hone in on the board of directors job description, the board of directors versus the ED. And we've talked about all of this as we moved along this morning. There is on page 38, there's a page specifically or a handout for the job description of the board chair. So I want to highlight these handouts as it relates to the specific topics of each. So page 36, the board of directors job descriptions. We've talked about board members. We started off with that. Some boards have a vice chair. So you have the board chair and the vice chair. Some boards have various committees. We talked about that. And so we've provided here some areas of focus for a committee chair, the secretary of the board, and then also the treasurer of the board. And again, each organization customizes your description of a board member, the vice chair, the committee chair, the secretary, the treasurer, as it relates to that. I'm going to come back to page 37. I want to go to page 38 with the job description of the board chair, since we were on that. Since on page 36, we were looking at officers. I want to go to page 38 as far as the board chair and the job description of the board chair. So look at this list and let me know if there's anything here that you don't understand or that you're not real clear about what we mean. So the board committees and board chair. Board committee and board chair. Board committees, the vice chair, the officers. Again, I repeat, the chair of the executive committee is the chair of the board of directors in terms of structure. Is there anything listed here that you're not quite clear about?
Hi, Dr. Palmer, Jackie here. Quick question. I have heard people say they are the CEO of the organization and also the board president. Can you get into that? Because I'm very confused by it.
I can. Some nonprofits choose that structure. They choose the structure of having the CEO also serve as the president of the board as an ex officio, but the board president, the president in that structure should not vote on action items. And typically it's explained in your bylaws. Now, Jackie, what I find though is sometimes we'll change the title. So like we might change the ED title to CEO and president, but we don't go back to the bylaws and change exactly how we define that or describe that. But that's what that means. It means that the CEO is the chief executive officer, ED, another way of saying ED, and they also serve as the president of the board. That's a structure that some organizations choose. I don't see that as much as I have that I've seen in the past, but that is oftentimes the case. But we have to be careful not to give that CEO who serves as the president of that board to not give them that they should be ex officio. They should not be voting on action items. Crystal.
I just have a question. So specifically for organizations like ours that is very young, and the board chair, which is myself, as the founder, I'm not an ED because I don't get paid a salary or anything like that because we have not matured to that level yet. Is that kind of what you were talking about? Because I don't know, because I sit on the board. In essence, just based on the executive director responsibilities, I do the day to day, but I don't get paid for the day to day. I don't have a payroll or anything. I just really honestly volunteer my time. However, in reference to the bylaws and logistics, as far as from a legal standpoint, are we doing this wrong?
I'm real careful not to say what someone is doing wrong or right, because there's a variety of ways in which you can start a nonprofit. I started a nonprofit from my kitchen table, so I understand exactly what you mean. And when I started the nonprofit, for all practical purposes, I was the chair, right? I started it, I put the board together, did all of that. Then it started to change because the work started to change. And so I started to function more as an ED. And so I would encourage you to choose a role. Even if you're a volunteer, choose a role. Either you're the volunteer ED or you're the volunteer chair, because I think it sets you up for more efficiency and clarity about what your role is and what it is not. So I would encourage that approach because clearly this person is the board chair, this person is the ED, and I, just like you, volunteered my time. I wasn't compensated. I worked as the ED role, but I knew because of what I knew about how nonprofits function, we made sure that we had a board and that there was a chair of the board so that those roles are separate. Then it helps us not to have to explain that. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
And Jackie, I want to go back to you to make sure did that help?
No, I'm so sorry. That just made me more confused because, we do want to, because the answer to Crystal is no, those should be separate. But then there's people sitting there with both titles. And I'm thinking, what? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be like, yeah.
Well, I don't want to confuse you, but I do want to encourage you to get credible guidance on your specific situation. And so I'd like to hear, if you're saying that's the way you're set up, I'd like to hear a little bit more about kind of how, why, all of those things. But it is not uncommon. I also want you to hear that it is not uncommon for a nonprofit to have adopted having the CEO president structure. That is not uncommon. Organizations do that. You have multiple ways that you can set up your organizational structure. So, you just have to choose what works best for you. And again, we don't want to confuse you. But we do want you to know what your options are. And then based on what your options are and what you need, then you may want to consider either of those.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think Monica was the one that said documentation. documentation, make sure that you have it spelled out either in your bylaws or in your policies and procedures, that we know exactly, meaning we, your board, we know exactly how this structure works, so that we're all very, very clear as it relates to that. Okay, so don't want you to be confused, but I do want you to know that you have options. Page 39. This is probably one of my favorite handouts. Probably one of my favorite handouts. Board chair, executive director, and understanding the difference in those two roles. The chair of the board is responsible for the board of directors. The board chair serves as the liaison between the organization, i.e. the ED, and the full board. The chairperson represents the board. The executive director represents the staff. And it should be working as a team and should be working as partners. So when you vote in your new chairs of your board, and or you hire your new ED, I do think it's important in that onboarding process that you help both of them understand how they work together, recognizing that the board of directors hires the ED. So that's important. And so we place that in your workbook. And then on page 37, like page 37 and 39, they go together. The board of directors, the executive director, board of directors, executive director, and the board chair and the ED. So I'm going to pause here. Team, if we could go to the gallery for just a minute. I just want to pause and just do a check-in. I know we're coming to the end of our time. Team, we will table slide 28 and we'll kick off with that on next week when we get together. But I just want to do a check-in before we move on to the next thing. A lot of information. A lot of information to digest. But again, each nonprofit organization is uniquely different. The culture of your organization is uniquely different. The culture of your community is uniquely different. The subsector of your nonprofit matters. So whether you're an arts organization or food pantry or homeless shelter, or, there's some ways in which you will work that will be very, very different. Or nonprofits that provide a direct service is different than a nonprofit that doesn't provide a direct service. So just very, very different. So understand the type of nonprofit that you represent, understand the way in which the board of directors functions by way of the bylaws. You can develop additional documents or policies related to your board in addition to the bylaws and the articles. So that can happen also, but really your organization decides how it wants to structure itself and how it wants to set up. Always remember, we can change. Like our organization changes over time, and that is okay. We just have to make those adjustments as we go in a timely manner. I want to just pause and just do a quick, not quick, but a check-in. Right now you're thinking what? Right now you're feeling what? Board governance and oversight. Right now you're thinking, right now you're feeling. Give us an idea of where you are.
Sorry, raising my hand.
Yes, Chris.
How often, what, so I'm in a position where I'm on a board, but there might be an opportunity to become an ED. Do we see that often where a board member might become the ED, or is there any conflict in that? I mean, obviously you step back from the board and you're no longer voting, but I'm just curious about that.
Yes, that does happen. I've seen that happen quite often. Sometimes it's a pretty efficient transition because that board member is very familiar with the organization. They have an understanding of how it works and how it operates. They're qualified, to be the ED. I would encourage you to have a screening process, regardless. I mean, just because they've served on the board doesn't mean we're going to not follow certain procedures to get them in that role. But yes, I have seen that. And I think it was Crystal that said she's the founder and she's the volunteer ED. And so definitely in those situations where you have a founder, a lot of times they'll end up in that ED role. And sometimes that's the plan, once the organization gets its legs, that they're going to secure an ED and the founder is on the board and the founder becomes the ED. But I do encourage you to have a process for that. But yes, I've seen that happen quite often.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Right now you're thinking what? Right now you're feeling you can use the React feature, or you could put it in the chat. Board governance and oversight. We could spend a whole week on this topic, right? We could spend an entire week on this topic. And again, be courageous. Decide how you want to structure it that way, implement it. If it doesn't work, make adjustments. It's okay to do. It's okay to do that. We don't have to continue to do our work the exact same way. Since the inception or the establishment of the organization. Right now, I see Sasa. Okay. Sweating. Got it. Well, I don't know if this helps or hurts, but we have 5 more topics to go, like 4 more topics to go, like 5 more topics to go. So we've got 4 more weeks. Sorry, I said 5, 4. We got 4 more weeks, but we do have 5 topics to go. We got more. We've got more that we're going to be building upon and adding as it relates to those 6 management functions that we've promised to cover for you. When we get together next week, just put in your notes. We're going to do one activity related to board governance to kick us off next week. And that activity is to kind of walk us through an exercise of doing a performance evaluation for the ED and a board of directors evaluation. So we're going to do those 2 things. That's what we're going to start with when we get together next week, is we're going to complete those 2. We have an exercise that we're going to walk you through to do that. And then we're going to move into our new topic for next week, which is program design, management, and evaluation. Before I pass this over to the team to close us out, again, I just want to do a check-in. Are we ready to go to the next topic? Ready for the next topic? Okay. All right. So I think I'm passing it over to Rebecca, I think.
Yes. Thanks, Dr. Palmer. Thanks for hanging in there with us, folks. We made it through session 2. We're almost over the hump. So next week's session, we'll be covering program design, management, and evaluation. This is one that folks had a lot of selections in their capacity assessment for, I noticed. So I'm sure we'll have lots to uncover there. We will we will pop in to close out board governance, which we sometimes have to do because it's such a meaty topic area for folks. So we'll be doing that as we get started next week. And a note to bring paper and colored pencils, please, for our next session. You'll have that there. I did want to mention too that I see a bunch of folks join the LinkedIn group, and I was delighted to see a response to the question we posed there about how you can support board engagement and what are some strategies that you discovered. Would love to see some more responses there. Nefertaria, you get bonus points for providing so many good ideas there. Thank you for participating. It's really, really nice to see. Please know you're not alone if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like this is a lot. That's a normal feeling. It's certainly okay to feel like that. It's a good thing that you're a part of this class and a part of this cohort, and just know that you're not alone and that others are feeling that way too. And those feelings will come and go. So it isn't a forever feeling, hopefully. So we'll put the link for I want to put the link for the LinkedIn group in case you haven't joined and you would like to. It's a great place to connect with the cohort. Put that in there. We do have our session evaluation for today's session. We do read these. We do take your feedback into consideration. It's important that we hear from you about how things are going. So I'll pop that in there as well. And it will be included, this link will be included in the wraparound email along with a link to the recording of this session, as well as any of the handouts that you've received and the slide deck. And let's go into member benefits real quick, brief overview of some of the things that members can access related to board governance. You see pro bono consults within legal and also coaching. Coaching is a little bit more intensive of a pro bono experience, whereas our other pro bono programs are just an hour consultation for free. The coaching is, I think it's more like 5 hours, where you get to work with a coach on some type of leadership development if you're needing further assistance. So members, that's a great resource for you. You'll be able to link these things when you get the slide deck. You can go to slide 30 and then you'll find all these things there. You can see we got some publications and Info Central resources, as well as our money saving partners to join the nonprofit quarterly at that discounted rate, as you see there. And then just want to mention once again our upcoming events. We are really excited to kick off our legal compliance workshop on Friday, this Friday. And like I mentioned before, the legal compliance checklist is going to be released on that date. It'll be updated, available for purchase. There we go. Oh gosh. And let's see what else. Also wanted to mention we've added another policy conversation. This one is in the Triad on June 15th. So you see we have a couple more coming up end of this month, the beginning of May, and then also on June 15th. And I'll pop that link in there if you're interested in joining one of our policy conversations. They're really a great chance to connect with other nonprofits and learn more about what folks are looking at in terms of policies that are coming up and ways that the center is being supportive of nonprofits and our sector as a whole throughout the state. And then finally is our regional convening series, which is being made possible by generous support from Duke Energy Foundation. We're excited to gather with folks in person for sort of a day-long mini conference. You can learn more about it through that link in the chat. And yeah, so you've got it all there. Any questions as we close out? We will hang on here for a couple minutes if folks have questions as part of office hours. Look for that email from us that'll have all the links from today's session. If you missed any part of today's session, sorry about the link, the wrong link being sent. You can catch up to the recording and listen in to hear what you missed. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here next week on Tuesday for Program Design Management and Evaluation. Thanks, everyone.